Welcome to Boys of Summer Masterclass Edition. We call it Masterclass because we need something to talk about besides the current news, and doggone it, baseball has not started yet in 2020. So this is Paul Arnold, your host, joined by Gene Gumbs and Eric Braun. And Gene, the temperature in Connecticut you said was what today?
62.
62.
Yeah, up here in the Northeast, it was a beautiful, and it's supposed to be 65 tomorrow. So it's baseball weather, but here we are. We'll take what we can get right now.
That's right. Eric Braun, there was a big deal around here because people were out on the hiking trails that normally don't go out, and they were coming across snakes sunning themselves.
Oh.
You have that down there, don't you?
Oh, yeah, man. I was out for a run a couple weeks ago and came across about a 3 or 4 foot long, I think it was just a black king snake. But yeah, we have lots of snakes. I see plenty of copperheads on the trails around here in the summer.
That's when you did your personal best record when you saw those snakes, right?
My highest heart rate, probably.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know these days wearing these watches, I can check how many steps I've taken and how high my heart rate is. And sometimes that's a little discouraging. But anyway, we're going to talk about today's podcast is a masterclass, meaning not that we're masters of everything, but we do like baseball. And we did a masterclass last week on the best baseball lineup of the 1990s. And this time we're going up to the next decade of the aughts. I always thought that sounded strange. You know, when you have the 2000s, some people said the aughts. And so before we get started, just so if this is your first time listening to us, I'm going to do a quick round with Eric and Gene so you can tell what kind of baseball fans they are. And I call this segment This or That Baseball. So, Gene, you ready?
I'm ready.
Quick answers is what I'm looking for. Would you rather play infield or outfield?
Infield, all day.
Bat left or right?
Right.
Rally caps or not?
Absolutely not.
Baseball stirrups pulled up low, mid, or high?
Very high.
Peanuts,
I'm old.
Peanuts or popcorn?
Peanuts.
Bubble gum or sunflower seeds?
Sunflower seeds.
Box seats, tickets, location, first base or third base?
First base.
Spring training, Florida or Arizona?
Florida.
Okay. Eric, same thing for you. Play infield or
Okay.
outfield?
Infield.
Left or right batting?
Left, of course.
Rally caps or not?
Yes, I'm pro rally cap.
Baseball stirrups pulled up low, mid, or high?
I'll say mid. I
Peanuts
don't have
or
hard
popcorn?
feelings about that. Peanuts.
Bubble
Oiled,
gum or
preferably.
sunflower seeds?
Sunflower seeds.
Box seats, tickets, location, first base or third base?
Third base.
Spring training, Florida or Arizona?
Arizona, of course, home of the Royals.
There you go. So, Gene, you are really against rally caps. Is that you just don't like the hokiness of it?
I just think it's. I mean, listen, I know baseball's all about superstitions, but come on, that's you start turning uniforms inside out, I get a little worried. Because at first the hats, what's next?
What bothers me more is when they use the jumbotrons to try to get you fired up or yell louder, and they have all these fancy things on there. And then we had a little disagreement here with stirrups pulled up low, mid, or high. So, Gene, you put
that's the 8-year difference, I think, between ages, right? Eric, were you born? You were born in '68, right?
Correct. Yes.
All right, I was born in 1960, so I'm old. And back then, everybody was wearing the high stirrups. So I mean, that's just a difference in age right there.
I will say I don't have strong feelings about stirrups. And back to the rally caps. I was actually because of where we are right now. The other night, the Royals put the 2014 wild card game on Facebook Watch, and a friend of mine was sitting on the third baseline, and I could see him throughout the game. And at one point, he was showing his son how to put on a rally cap late in the game. So it was pretty terrific.
Nice. All right, just so people know where I stand, I would rather play infield. I bat right. Yes to rally caps. I am a mid stirrup guy. Peanuts, definitely. The kind you have to break open and wear at the game and throw the shells under the seat.
Not boiled peanuts.
Oh, wow, that's a whole nother story. All right, bubble gum, yes, definitely. And give me the dry bubble gum or the double bubble. Tickets location, I like third base myself, and then Florida over Arizona because in Florida more theme parks. So there you go.
I do wish the Royals would move back to Florida.
Yeah, and Florida to me is just a tradition because when I first started going to games, everybody was in Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, Arizona was a rarity. There were only a handful of teams that were in Arizona. So, I mean, heck, the Dodgers were in Florida. I mean, you got you could go to Florida, drive around a couple of hours, and see maybe a dozen teams. It was great.
For me, the best feeling about going to spring training was sitting in the sun watching the game. But the second might surprise you guys. When the sun goes down and you're driving at night with the windows down, you smell all the orange groves or all the flowers. It just
Yeah.
smells so great. And after coming down from Michigan, the great frozen northern state that we live in, it was just like awesome. Okay, so we're going to get to the best players of the decade, and I have one more segment before we do that. You guys, do you like baseball pranks?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you think a hot foot is funny?
No.
No.
No. Yeah.
All right. Do you think changing a player's walk-up music when he goes up to hit is funny?
I'm generally anti-walk-up music.
Yeah, me
so,
too. Yeah. I mean, we didn't. When I grew up playing baseball, we didn't have walk-up music. Unless you were humming to yourself on the way to the batter's
Yes,
box.
I agree.
That was about all you had.
Walk-up music's way overrated. So this practical joke, I think, is still some of the best. When players put icy hot in a jock strap, and so a guy puts that on, and he feels a little extra motivation to run around. And
That's a
Big
classic.
Papi, when he played for the Twins, you would think he was such a big guy, nobody would mess with him. But Corey Koski put peanut butter in David Ortiz's underwear, and somehow David Ortiz didn't notice it until he put it on and put
Peanut
on his
butter?
pants. Yes,
Are
peanut
you
butter.
kidding me? Oh my God.
It does
I
not
never-
say in this
I
article if
never
it was
heard that one.
chunky or creamy, but that's a whole nother
I-
story.
Oh please. Here's a whole bunch of lines there. We're just gonna let's move on before I get.
All right. Just keep things light these days. All right. So we're gonna do around the horn like we did before. Each one of us take a turn telling our choice for the best position player, and then the other two of us can chime in. So Gene, you get the honor. Who is your best pitcher for the 2000s?
Oh, you started with a tough one. I was torn here. I wanted to say Pedro simply because I love Pedro, and if you look at his numbers, they're pretty impressive.
Homer.
But I didn't go with him.
Oh,
I went with Randy Johnson.
yeah.
Look, Randy Johnson won more games between 2000 and 2009 than anybody, other than Andy Pettit. But he won 143 games in those 9 years. He had a low ERA. He struck out a ridiculous number of guys during that time. He struck out almost 2,200 guys between 2000 and 2009. There was nobody close to that. There was nobody else that even got as high as 1,700. That's how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go with him. So I went with him, then Pedro, and then my third guy, throwing Erica Bowen, would have been Roy Oswalt from the Houston
Ooh,
Astros.
Nice
Oh, yeah.
choices. Eric, do you confirm or are you going to go off the board?
Yeah, no, I went with Randy Johnson. I mean, a 24-win season, in the middle there is just, that's insane. I mean,
Yeah.
you just don't see that kind of season from MLB pitchers anymore. And the guy was just, he was strong in the 90s, but the 2000s, he just put together some amazing numbers.
Right. 4-time Cy Young. And I will say, I looked up some trivia about Randy Johnson because I picked him as well. Do you guys know the team that originally drafted him in 1982?
Was it the Yankees?
Nope.
Padres?
Nope. You both struck out. Atlanta Braves drafted him in the
Really?
fourth round in 1982, but Johnson accepted a scholarship to USC, Southern California, and his teammates were Mark McGuire and Jack Del Rio, the famous NFL linebacker / coach. Del Rio was the catcher on the team, and what's really strange is 1984, there was an Olympic team, and the USC coach was the coach for the Olympic team, and he cut Randy Johnson off the Olympic team. If you could-
Oh,
Thanks, Coach.
really?
Really, it's unbelievable. And then here's going along with the whole idea of practical jokes. When Randy Johnson was in minor leagues with Rex Hudler, I'm sure Eric recognizes that name.
yeah.
Crime
Yes.
dog. The crime dog.
They went shopping together because they're roomies. And Randy Johnson would place his groceries on one side of the refrigerator and told Hudler, "Stay off my stuff." As he probably snarled or whatever. And then Hudler said it just got to him, so he'd play with him. He would say, "Hey, I drank your orange juice." So Randy Johnson put a piece of tape on the line on the orange juice so he could tell if Hudler was drinking his orange juice.
Wow. Hey,
That's awesome.
Randy Johnson was huge. Why would you mess with? Don't poke the bear.
No.
Well, Hud's a different kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, no, that's true. That is true. Yeah, that's
So,
true.
on
But
ahead.
but by the way, while you were calling me a homer with Pedro, do you know, by the way? Now hang on.
Yeah.
Of all the starting pitchers in the 2000s,
Yeah.
Pedro Martinez had the lowest ERA.
I know, I have it right here.
Yeah.
He had a
Yeah, he had a
3.01.
301.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a 301. The next lowest, believe it or not, was Johan Santana from the Minnesota Twins and the Mets at 312. So, it wasn't quite. I wasn't really being a homer. Matter of fact, Oswald had a lower ERA than Randy Johnson did too. But Johnson was just so dominant. It's almost impossible not to pick him.
Yeah. Santana gave up baseball for music, right? Guitarist?
No,
Joe. Sorry.
not wrong guy.
I'm sorry.
Wah, wah, wah.
Uh,
Roy Halladay had a heck of a year.
Yeah.
Had a heck of a
Yeah, he
decade,
did.
too.
He did. I mean, that's but that's why I said I think of all the positions I had to pick, I think starting pitcher might have been the hardest.
If that was the hardest, this may be the easiest for Eric. Eric, who's your catcher for the 2000s?
Oh, I went with Pudge.
Yeah. Got
Yeah,
to.
that was. I mean, the guy was, offense, defense. He's the whole package.
No doubt. And I did as well. I get a little honorable mention going to Joe Mauer with the Twins. The Tigers would play
I like Mauer.
and he's such a class act all the way through, and he would kill us. And he'd be beating you, and he still couldn't dislike. I mean, he still liked him, even when he beat you.
Yeah.
Gene, what do you think?
Guys, I don't understand your choice. I really don't.
Oh, don't
sorry.
say. No, you didn't
No,
go Yankee
no.
with me, did you?
I did. Oh, I
No.
absolutely did.
He's my number two.
Hey,
He's my
listen.
number two.
Look at Jorge Posada. He had an 878 OPS during the decade, which was 60 points higher than Pudge. He hit more home runs than Pudge. He had more RBIs than Pudge by a ton. To me, it was a no-brainer. Posada was number one for me, and it wasn't close. I had Pudge second, and then I had a homer pick. Jason Varitek was my third pick.
Oh, I love
Well,
Veritek. I got a T-shirt
I
with
did.
Veritek's name on it still.
Yeah, this was definitely my homer pick as I lived in Detroit during.
Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, but I just looked at look, defensively, Pudge was a much better catcher, no question. But Posada was no slouch defensively, and as much as I can't stand the Yankees, the way that guy hit the ball was impressive.
What was
Yeah.
his
I had
batting average?
I had him
though?
in, and then I
Hang on, I'll give it to you. Posada batted. Where is it? He had 283.
Yeah.
So Pudge had a higher batting average. Pudge hit 298.
Yeah.
But Posada on all the other production numbers, as far as runs batted in and hitting the ball out of the ballpark, Posada was a better player.
I have to give
So-
Posada credit for the way he handled the pitchers of the Yankees during the 2000s.
yeah, that's true.
And I always felt, and you know what? And again, there were, as much as I hated the Yankees, there were always two people on the New York Yankees I always said wish were on the Red Sox. Jorge Posada was one of them, and Derek Jeter was the other one.
All right, so we're coming around to first base, and I'll go first with this one. To me, I think this is a no-brainer. If you guys looked at the same websites with all the stats, you will probably say the same thing. Albert Pujols was amazing. The 9-time All-Star was the only player in history to hit 30 home runs and 100 RBIs each year for the first 10 years of his career. I mean, we make a lot that he signed this huge contract with the Angels, 10 years, $240 million. But up until that point, he had hit so well. Some people said that last year before the contract, you could see some decline. But if they play baseball this year, he'll make 29 million this year and 30 million in 2021 before this contract ends.
Yeah.
Was this Scott Boras who got him this contract? Somebody just
Gotta be, right?
really did a great job for him. I mean, we talk about who's the Mets guy who gets paid every year.
Bobby Bonilla.
Bobby
Bobby
Bonilla.
Bonilla.
That was one
Yeah.
of the greatest contracts ever. I think Bullhost's contract was one of the greatest contracts ever.
Yeah.
If you're a
Yeah,
baseball
it's number
player,
2 to Bonilla.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I mean, in a decade, he won the MVP 3 times.
Yeah.
He was second 3 times, and he was third once. And then the other times that he wasn't first, second, or third, he was fourth. I mean, so it was just ridiculous. I mean, and guys don't have an OPS over 1,000 for a season. You just don't do that. He did it 8 times out of the 10 years.
right?
8 times out of 10 years, he had an OPS over 1,000. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was that way, and for the entire decade, his average.
Yeah.
Yes, over 1,000.
Oh,
That's amazing.
it's just crazy. Just crazy.
Yeah, he played so well, and he's been a class act. Even when he's had some struggles with the Angels, he still, kept his cool and kept on swinging. And he's just an average player now, but he just showed such brilliance early on. It was amazing. And there's some other players that weren't slouches at first. Todd Helton was pretty amazing. Jason Giambi was a good player too, as well.
Well, so was Carlos Delgado. Don't forget about him. He was a
Yeah,
really
Delgado.
good first baseman. And Jim Thome too, but Thome was more of a DH the second half of the decade. But Jim Thome's in the Hall of Fame, so he was no slouch either, and he was playing at the same time. So the first base, the number of the guys playing first base was a pretty impressive list.
Yes, there were.
And don't forget the homer pick, David Ortiz, Big Papi.
Big Poppy. Well,
More of a DH.
Well,
but-
we're going to
but
talk about
still.
DH before we're
Right.
done, so that could be a good discussion there. Gene, I have you up for picking second base.
Yeah, this was a tough one because you know what? I didn't find there were a lot of great first basemen. Now, Craig Biggio's in the Hall of Fame, but he's not my pick. I went with Jeff Kent, a guy I think who should be in the Hall of Fame. Jeff Kent had a heck of a decade, had 327 home runs and an OPS of 889 for the decade.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now it's pretty good. He hit for a decent average. He was an average, probably fielding second baseman. But I think he gets a bad rap on that. But this is a guy that could hit the heck out of the ball. So I went with Jeff Kent, and my runner-up wasn't Biggio either. My runner-up, and I went based just on offensive numbers, was Alfonso Soriano.
Oh.
Because Soriano has some outstanding numbers as well. Now, Soriano was a butcher in the field. He played like he had blindfolds on, but when he got to the plate, he could hit the heck out of the ball.
Yeah, I forgot about him altogether. Eric, who did you pick?
Yeah, I went with Kent too, and I think probably the only reason he isn't in the Hall of Fame is because as good of a player he was also probably one of the most hated people.
He was a jerk.
Just the biggest jerk. Yeah. So, I'm sure he'll probably end up getting in. He should. I mean, I don't know what you want out of a player. And he kind of went out on top too. I mean, 2008 was his last year. He hit 280. I mean, just a good player. Maybe not the greatest human, but there's been worse in baseball.
By the way, he speaks very highly of us.
Does he? Good. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Listens every podcast, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, he ended up his career with the Giants, and there's a few stories because I picked him too because of, the guy won an MVP. He was an all-star, led the batting average for his position. But when he went to the Giants, there was another guy over there with initials BB, some guy named Bonds.
Yeah.
And one of the stories is that J.T. Snow, who was the first baseman there, tells the story that they were at spring training in the Cactus League, and they all had to board these vans that would take them out to these spare fields at the minor league complex. And Kent had just arrived by trade from Cleveland, and he went into the van, and he sat in the front row in the front seat. And that was Bonds' seat. And so Bonds came on, saw Kent, and said, "Dude, get in the back. That's my seat." And Kent said, "I'm not moving. I was here first. You came after me. You sit in the back." Well, they just sort of stared at each other for a while, and then finally Bonds shrugged his shoulders and went to the back of the seat, back of the vehicle. And everybody took notice, like Kent was not going to take any crap from anybody, but he was such a loner. He would not talk to people. He would turn with his back, turn to his teammates and read magazines. And of course, you remember in 2002, he hurt his wrist washing his truck, right? No. You know what? You remember how he actually hurt his wrist?
No.
No. He was popping wheelies on his motorcycle on a stretch of highway.
Man.
Yeah, so
I think he actually finished his. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm done with that story.
I think he actually finished his career with the Dodgers.
Oh,
Did
the
he?
Dodgers? You're right.
Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, last.
Yeah, you're right. Matter of fact, his last 4 years were with the Dodgers.
Yep.
I take that back. Way to correct me, Eric.
He did hit 280 though. He did hit two. You were right about that, and he hit 300 the year before that. So it's not like his skills.
Yeah, he went out on top.
Yeah, his skills did not decline with age. So
did you guys consider Chase Utley as a better human being and not as better hitter?
No, not really. Chase Utley was. I don't know that I qualify him as a great human being either.
Boom.
Well, he had his share. He had his share of issues in Philadelphia, and had his share of issues. I believe it was. Didn't he go to the Dodgers? And he had a couple of dust-ups over there as well. So he had some issues in his career as well. But to be honest with you, I had actually forgotten about Chase Utley.
I had him as my second, but he only played like 4 or 5 years in that decade.
Yeah, in a decade. Yeah. The other guy that a lot of people forget about, was a pretty good second baseman, was Brian Roberts too.
Oh yeah,
he was pretty good. Yeah, he was pretty good.
There's a lot of players in baseball that when they're playing, you just I know who that is, and then years later you go, oh man, I forgot you
remember
played.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Eric, you get to go first with our third baseman.
Yeah, so for third, I regrettably but went with the stats and picked A-Rod. I mean, he was unquestionably the best third baseman of the decade, just based on stats. How honestly he got it, I'm not sure, but I had to go with A-Rod.
Yeah, 3-time MVP. I mean, that's sort of hard.
Right.
To
Yeah. It was hard to.
He averaged 40 home runs in that decade. I mean, every year.
I had to check this though, because he also played short part of the decade, and it turns out he played shortstop for 4 years and third base for 6 years. So I said, all right, that's why I gave him the nod at third as well. But yeah, that was a tough one, because I was first thinking that he might have been more of a shortstop in the decade than he was a third baseman, but that's not the case.
Well, last podcast we all confessed our admiration and almost love for Chipper Jones, and Chipper was pretty good during those years as well. He averaged during the 2000s 309, 28 home runs, 89 RBIs. But, let's do a little gossip here, or the drama. Everybody talks about Derek Jeter's starting lineup of dating. A-Rod wasn't too bad either. After he divorced in 2008, he dated Madonna, Bethany Frankel from Housewives of New York, Kate Hudson, actress. And Kate Hudson's been quoted as saying she broke up with A-Rod because he wouldn't stop calling Madonna. Okay. Cameron Diaz, the actress, broke up with him.
Yeah, forgot about her.
And then he dated 3 models before finally dating Jennifer Lopez, and they're engaged to be married now. So A-Rod's done all right in different ways. I'll just put that.
Yeah, he's done all right.
I wasn't too impressed with the first 2, but after that he did. Not a big Madonna fan, but hey, whatever. But no, you're right. I mean, you know what? Because he's such a bad-looking guy. I mean,
just
right.
I remember my wife. I remember my wife going one time, because my wife, she watches baseball, but she doesn't really know these guys by sight. One time, he was on ESPN, and she goes, "Who's that?" And I went, "Really, honey?" and then J-Lo came on. She said, "Oh, I know who that is now."
Oh wow,
Mr. J-Lo,
Mr. Lopez, exactly.
Mr. Lopez. I have
and
seen.
I'm not talking George Lopez either.
No. I'm a big watcher of the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and Rodriguez. A-Rod's been on there multiple times, and he honestly looks happy. Like he's real comfortable with his own skin now. I mean, he went through a long time trying to figure out how to relate to other people, I think. But he actually looked happy now, so I'm happy for him.
He has done an absolutely amazing job of rehabilitating his image. For somebody who was caught red-handed with steroids and who admitted to it, he has done a remarkable job, to the point where I actually kind of like the guy now, and it just the fact that he was willing to fess up to what he did, say,
Right.
hey, I screwed up. I should have never done this, and having that ESPN platform certainly helps. But this is a guy. I mean, anybody who's ever been caught, you want a lesson in how to get the fans back on your side. Watch what A-Rod's done.
Yeah, I agree. He's done well in a lot of different ways.
He's a really good analyst on
Yeah.
ESPN.
Yeah, if they could just shut Matt Vasgersian up, it'd be great. but A-Rod is really, really good.
Yeah.
So that's a good question for you guys. If you could pick only one program or channel to watch people commentate about baseball, you got MLB Network, ESPN, Fox. Which one would you go to, Eric?
Gosh, that's a good question. I flip around so much. I'd probably go with the MLB Network, although it kind of gets my journalist hackles up to go with the official network. But but they have some really good, smart people, and there's not a lot of blowhards on there as much. I think, and sometimes I mix them up a little bit. But yeah, it seems like
I think MLB Network, and to me, it's not close. I frankly, I don't watch ESPN unless I have to.
I really haven't watched ESPN in a long time.
I mean, and and you look at the MLB Network, and they have guys like Mike Lowell and Jim Tomei and Pedro Martinez and Harold Reynolds. They've got these guys. I mean, and these guys are very smart and they're very thoughtful. And Billy Ripken's great. I love listening. I mean, he is great. So I just think that they, top to bottom, they do the best job. The only guy on the MLB Network that I can't deal with, I can't stomach, is Brian Kenny. The talking head they have that's Mr. Analytics.
Yeah.
He's the guy that makes my head want to explode. But outside of that, the guys that they have from former Major League Baseball players as analysts on that network, top shelf.
I used to love watching Peter Gammons on ESPN talk about baseball. And I don't know.
Well,
do you know the story
he's on the
why
MLB
he left?
Network. Well, he's on the MLB Network now.
Yeah.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah, something went down at ESPN that he never talked about the way he left there, and it was a bummer.
Yeah, don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but he's on MLB Network now, and they've got Bob Costas on all the time, too. Nice. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, it's my turn to pick shortstop, and I've already alluded to him a little bit. Derek Jeter.
Another slam dunk.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy one. I mean, you look at his statistics, and we all think about certain key plays and his leadership and his hustle. And he grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. His dad was and his mom were very strict with him, setting goals. He bat for the decade, .317. He averaged 16 home runs. It's not too much, 73 RBIs, but he always batted high in the lineup, which I think helped a lot. But also, I have to mention, since I mentioned A-Rod's dating Diamond, Derek Jeter. I don't know if it was Dan Patrick came up with this first or who, but they have Minka Kelly playing catcher, Jordana Brewster playing first base, Adriana Lima playing second base, Scarlett Johansson, Miss Black Widow, shortstop, Vanessa Manillo playing third base, Mariah Carey in left field, Jessica Alba, in center, and Jessica Biel in right field, and designated hitter Tyra Banks. And so Derek Jeter finally got married and settled down and is ruining the Florida Marlins. Maybe. I don't know.
He is. Yeah, that's not been a great mark on his career.
Well, and right now he has Tom Brady living at his house.
Right. So do you think that's going to work in the Marlins? I mean, he's basically blew it up and rebuilding. Gene, do you think it's going to work?
Yeah, you know what? I think it will. As long as he doesn't bail, I think he has the right idea. You got to, it was a mess. They had too many high-priced players, and he wants to build it from the ground up. I think it has the potential to work, but if you're a Marlins fan, you got to be patient. I think I give them another 2 to 3 years. I think they can be competitive. The problem is that they're in a division with a lot of teams that spend a lot of money. So they're going to have to do it, and I think this is what he's modeling after. They're going to have to do it the Tampa Bay Ray way. And I think that's what he's trying to do, and that's what Tampa's done. They've built their farm system up, and then they try to find these guys that are, that they can get the most value out of the least amount of money. So I think he's a smart dude. I think he'll make it work.
I mean, he's one of the great shortstops. Although last podcast we talked about my love, at least for Cal Ripken, and your guys' admiration for Cal Ripken. If you had one game and one starting lineup, would you start Cal Ripken or Derek Jeter? Tough question.
Boy. Yeah,
that's why they pay me the big bucks to ask the tough questions.
I you know what, I have to say Ripken.
Yeah.
And it's not that I hate Jeter. I always thought that Ripken was one of the best ever at that position. I really was a big fan of his. So I think I'd go with him.
And Ripken was pretty clutch, and Jeter's postseason numbers aren't fantastic.
Yeah, true.
Well, Jeter had a wider range than Ripken, but Ripken always was so analytical in his brain. And knowing how to anticipate to increase his range. So I would go with Ripken as well, not trying to slam Jeter. Jeter would probably say Ripken as well because he was a huge fan.
Well, and don't forget that, Cal Ripken wasn't just a shortstop. He played third base as well. I mean, Jeter was a one-position player his entire career. And, Ripken had a little bit more flexibility as far as that goes. And, and you're right, in the postseason, although you know what, in the postseason, I think he was a little bit better than you think he was, Eric. He was a 300 hitter in the postseason.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he hit 308 in the postseason.
All right. Well,
wow. How did you get that? Did you just type that into your Google search, or did you have that?
Baseballreference.com. It's my friend. I have it up in front of the computer as we were speaking. So while you were speaking, I looked it up. He hit 308.
I wonder how many guys that got in trouble being on the computer all night with baseballreference.com. I mean,
very few.
It's so cool, though.
Okay,
Gene, we're to left field, and you're up to tell us your pick.
Oh, well, again, this was it was a semi no-brainer. We had two Royd candidates as far as I was concerned. There were only two, and number one was Barry Bonds, and number two was Manny Ramirez.
Yeah,
those were the only two guys I seriously considered. I had to go with Bonds simply because of what he did. I mean, Bonds was absolutely ridiculous. Here's the one line on his stats that tells you that there's no reason you couldn't pick him. He walked 1,128 times in a decade. He only struck out 427 times. That is unheard of. He was intentionally walked 390 times in the decade.
Wow.
But when you walk almost 3 times more than you strike out, that is impressive. Home runs aside, just the amount of times that you get on base, it absolutely insane.
I agree. Yeah, and he averaged 40 home runs a season. I wonder how much of that would have been if he didn't take roids. I mean, I think the home run totals would have gone down, but I still think he would have hit for average like he did the previous decade. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the guy, he could just hit, right? So why? It's so frustrating that he did that to himself. The guy was just one of the best natural hitters of my lifetime.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and if you look at what Bonds did when he was in Pittsburgh, I mean, before the trade to San Francisco, this is a guy, his last couple of years, or a few years in Pittsburgh, he had 301, 292, 311. And, he was hitting 34, 33, 25 home runs, driving in over 100 runs. This is a guy that without the steroids was going to probably be a Hall of Famer. He was a skinny, if you look at pictures of him when he was on the Pirates, he was this runt. He was skinny. And it wasn't until a few years into his time in San Francisco where all of a sudden he looked like the Michelin Man. I mean, but he was on his way to being a Hall of Fame player. That's the only reason I give this guy any kind of a pass, because I remember watching him, and I watched him live in the ballpark a couple of times when he was in Pittsburgh. And I just remember going, wow. I mean, he's one of those players that just stood out. You knew as soon as you saw the guy, this guy was a special player. He didn't need the steroids. He became otherworldly with the steroids, but even without them, I think he was a Hall of Fame player.
Yep.
So follow my logic
doubt,
here for a little bit. With Barry Bonds, you have a steroid guy who you just scratch your head and go, why? With Manny Ramirez, maybe he did steroids, but he's the type of player you just want to laugh and have a good time with, right? I mean, the baggy uniform, just taking his time. And Gene, did he really use the bathroom behind the big wall all the time?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Is there a bathroom to use there?
There is. That's a manual scoreboard. There's people that are back in that scoreboard all day.
So there's actually a urinal back there.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing the wall thing.
I've been back there. I've seen it. My name is I signed the inside of the wall at Fenway Park. I mean, there's a bathroom back there. And there's a couple of times that I was working games at Fenway Park, and he'd come flying out of that little door in the scoreboard because he had just gotten done using the bathroom, and he was still buckling his pants when he was walking back onto the field.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no.
I will say, when I was looking at those two guys as the two obvious choices for left field, I really tried to shoehorn Miggy in there.
Well, you know what? Yeah, no, that's, I'll tell you what, that's not a bad one.
Yeah, but his 3 years, looks like about 3 years he spent in left, and those were not his best years.
That's true. You're right.
So I couldn't quite make it work, but I wanted to get Miggy in there, but it's
Well, I'm going to get Miggy in here before the end for a different reason.
All right.
So we got to talk about it somewhere. All right, we're going to go to center field, and Eric, you get to go first with center field.
This was a tough one. I really kind of, it wasn't like a great decade for center, like defensive center fielders, I would say. So so I really waffled between Beltran and Edmonds. Edmonds, I think he was maybe, he made a lot of spectacular plays. I'll say that. So I think he was, better in center than Edmonds, but I gave the nod to Beltran, and that's probably a little bit of homerish, just because he actually did play on the Royals during that decade, so that was nice. Throw at least one in there, and I mean, the guy was an all-star, a regular on the all-star lineup, and just was one of the to me one of the best players of the decade.
I agree. He averaged 282, 25 home runs, and 92 RBIs. He was both a Gold Glover and a Silver Slugger. And Jim Edmonds with the Cardinals made the top plays of the day all the time. He just ran down, laid out, did all these great things, and he hit 280, 29 home runs, and 85. So his averages were close. It's too bad that Carlos Beltran has got this sort of smear on his name since this Astro thing happened this last year. Right. Because before that, they thought enough of him to go from no coaching experience to being the manager of the Mets. What do you think, Gene?
Yeah, I agree. I went with Beltran. I had Edmonds second, and actually, the guy at third, throwing you another bone, Eric, was Jermaine Dye.
Oh,
Jermaine Dye did. He had some very nice years.
Yes,
I mean, he had, he was an all-star a couple of times. He had 1 year, I think he hit like close to 320 1 year. I think he had like 40 plus home runs 1 year for when he was playing for the Chicago White Sox. He started the decade with the Royals, but he finished it up with the White Sox. So I had him in there too. But I'm a big Jim Edmonds fan. But you look at Beltran's numbers, and to me, I had to go that way. And don't forget, Griffey Jr. was still playing then.
Yep.
Andrew Jones was playing then, and Andrew Jones had more home runs than any of those guys, except Andrew Jones only hit about 250.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was why I didn't include him. But
yeah, that was the thing. Really.
Yeah.
By the way, did you know Jim Edmonds is actually struggling with the coronavirus right now? He's tested positive.
I did not. Oh,
yeah,
really? Wow.
he's symptomatic. So I just saw that the other day. So I say a little prayer for Jim Edmonds. Sorry, Jim, we didn't pick you for this, but he was a heck of a center fielder.
He sure
I
was.
loved watching him play.
Yeah.
I agree. All right, well, let's move on to right field, and I get to go first on this one. And I did my research. I looked at websites, and as much as he made a big impact for Japan and Suzuki helping Seattle, I did not go with him. This is
Really?
just a
Wow.
pure gut feel. Give me
Neither did I.
Vlad. Give me Vlad in the morning. Give me Vlad at the night. Give me Vlad
Yep.
every weekend. Guerrero, every time he came up to bat for the Expos or the Angels or whoever he played for, it was always like, man, this guy could hit it out. He was fast. He was big. I mean, he was no slouch during that decade. He hit an average of 323. Come on. He had 315 home runs during that time. He averaged 104 RBIs. He was just a great player, but he fell off pretty quickly after that. But, I mean, he was an amazing, exciting player. And I think Ichiro is a nice story because he played so long and he's a slap hitter, and that's sort of nice. But, man, I think when you need to get home runs driven home, you got to go with Vlad. Gene?
Yeah, I agree. Vladdy was ridiculous, and not only that, he had a hose in right field too. Although so did Suzuki. But when you hit 323 and you have over 1,000 RBIs in a decade, and by the way, I talked about that stat with Bonds. Here's another guy. He walked 569 times in a decade. He only struck out 670. So this is a guy who was a free swinger. Think about that now. In 10 years, he struck out an average of 67 times a year. I mean, we have guys that'll strike out 67 times in a month now.
Right.
You know, he struck out 67 times in a year. And by the way, this is the only guy I ever saw who hit a baseball out of the ballpark on the bounce. The pitch bounced in front of the plate. It was a 58-footer, and he hit it out of the ballpark.
What?
Good grief.
You've never seen
No.
never seen that? There's
No.
a clip of that. It's unbelievable. It's like something out of cricket. On the bounce and crushed it.
Crazy.
Absolutely crushed it. So when you can do that, you're my hero.
Wow. That's
And by the way,
crazy.
I threw my you know who my second choice was actually?
Who?
It wasn't Ichiro. My second choice was Maglio Ordonez.
Oh, good old Mags.
He hit 316 for the decade. You know, again, he's one of those guys that, you were talking about it. When they play, you remember how good they were. As soon as they retire, you forget how good they were.
Yes, yeah.
This is a guy when he was playing, you worried about him when he was playing for the White Sox. That was one of those guys in the lineup you weren't looking forward to seeing come up.
Yeah. He had some good years with the Tigers, I have to throw in there as well.
Yeah.
Sure did,
Yep,
yeah.
Sure did. Yeah.
Eric, did you have Vlad or did you go Suzuki?
So Vladimir Guerrero is, if we were going by like my favorite players of all time, it would have been a slam dunk for Guerrero. So I saw him play his single A ball for the Albany Polecats back in the early 90s, which,
Albany,
watching
Georgia, by the
Vladimir-
way.
Albany. Yeah, he would just, you can imagine him hitting single A pitching, and it was just, it was incredible. So he's one of my all-time favorites, and just the way he played and just sort of his good nature. And so, yeah, he's one of my favorites. I did go with Ichiro. I mean, the guy batted 333 for the decade. His OPS was 811. So
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And 340 some stolen bases in the decade. So, I mean, and then just the pure defensive skills. Guerrero, my memory serves, it wasn't the greatest fielder. If he caught it, you were good. But Ichiro for me he's one of the just one of the all-time greats. I mean, he was an all-star every single year of the decade, MVP in 2001.
Rookie of the year, too.
MVP and Rookie of the Year, yeah. So not bad.
And
so.
by the way, how about that you're an all-star, you're an MVP, you're the Rookie of the Year, you win a Gold Glove, and you win a Silver Slugger.
That's not bad.
I mean,
solid year.
that's not too shabby.
Yeah.
Did I see a report?
Yeah, so I gave the nod.
Yeah, did I see a report that he tried out this spring? He was going to try to make a team
He
this
was
year.
talking about it. Yeah. He was.
Well,
talking about it.
I know he was in camp with the Seahawks, but he was there just throwing like batting practice and stuff. I don't think he was actually trying out, but he was in camp throwing batting practice and things like that. So, you know what? He could probably fall out of bed and still get a hit.
Probably. Yeah.
All right, Gene, you're up with relief pitcher if we don't know already what you're going to say. I know it pains you to say this, I know.
Right.
Although you
Yeah,
might go off the board and say Papelbon,
no,
but I don't think you are.
no. There's nobody but Mariano Rivera. I mean, it's not. There's no. And look, I tried to be fair about this. I tried to give somebody else a chance.
Yeah.
And the only guy that I could come up with that was close
Yeah.
was Billy Wagner.
Yes.
Billy Wagner. I mean, he had an ERA of 240. I mean, and he's this is a guy that saved an awful lot of games. He saved 284 saves in the decade, but Mariano Rivera was just ridiculous. I mean, I hated him. I mean, but you know what? One of my best friends, her husband is a teacher in the New York City school systems, and had Mariano Rivera's kid in his classroom. And he used to tell me stories about when Mariano Rivera and his wife would come for like parent teacher nights. And he was just telling me what a down to earth guy that he is. He doesn't big time anybody, just humble, and this guy was a Yankee fan, and Mariano was just about as humble as can be. And so he was a winner on the field. He sounds like he's a winner off the field. And so I had to go with him.
So we're running out of time, so I'm going to just go real quick around. Eric, you agree with that for relief pitcher?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's go around the horn quickly. Designated hitter. Just tell me if you pick somebody. I know that Gene probably already picked David Ortiz. Is that right?
You betcha. You betcha.
I mean,
best clutch hitter I have ever seen.
I would say I can't think of anybody that's hit more hits in the last 20 years that I've known about, that I remember like him. Eric, did you pick anybody else for designated hitter?
No. Ortiz was the guy.
So I am just going to go off the board with two fun things at the end. For my utility player for the 2000s, I'm going to pick Miggy Cabrera because he played first base, third base, outfield. I mean, how could you not recognize this guy? He averaged in the 2000s 311. He had 209 home runs. But the player I really want to talk about at the end is Jim Thome. And this is why. Because baseball is about people really applying themselves, and it's such a marathon. And we knew him as country strong, 6'4", 250. And he led the whole league in strikeouts twice in the 2000s, which wasn't the greatest thing, but he was always a class act. In fact,
yes.
People said nobody worked harder than him. Charlie Manuel said, I can't explain to you how much he hit the ball in practice before he would hit. And even when he was elected to the Hall of Fame, he told his wife, I'm going to go outside to practice my Hall of Fame speech because I'm going to be outside for the speech. And every day, at least twice a day, he went out and practiced that speech. And when he was last in Minnesota, the Twins players would say he is the best teammate we ever had. And part of his speech, he said this, I still can't believe this happened to me, our 13th round draft pick out of Central Illinois. To every kid who is dreaming of standing here one day, take it one moment at a time. Don't sail too high or sink too low. Learn to be good at handling failure. Be the first one to the ballpark. Be the last one to leave. Work hard. Don't complain. Be a great teammate. And above all, treat people with respect. Man, that's what baseball is about to me. It's about statistics, but it's about character and how you play the game. And I know that Eric and Gene agree with me on that as well. We've talked about this before. So This has been another one of our podcasts. I'm sort of wrapping it up here because we're up on time. But we enjoy having these times talking. Hope you do as well. If you want to listen to more of Gene, listen to him at sportscountry.net. He's on every Friday morning with his show. And you can email me at gobluearnold@gmail.com. That's gobluearnold@gmail.com. And so this is Paul Arnold talking for Gene Gumbs and Eric Braun. Thanks for listening to Boys of Summer.